Hi, this is Han from Noise Guild, and you've arrived at the third video walkthrough of our VI 24-tone Gongs, Mallets and Sticks. And this video is about the settings tab, which is the third tab of the three interface tabs. The settings tab is about fine-tuning the instrument. Here are all the tweaky parameters on one page. There are two important concepts at stake here. The first one is this central placed articulation knob, which is actually a copy of the one on the main page. So here you choose which articulation you're editing. The second important concept is that on the left side, generally, of this interface, there are parameters which are local, so they are editable for all articulations individually. And then on the right side, there are a lot of parameters which are global. So that means they are the same for all articulations. So when you move the articulation knob, they stay the same. On the far left upper side of the interface, there's a little mixer with which you can set the levels for all four elements of the particular sound you're editing. So the sustained, the clamped, the grab sound itself, the grabbing of the gongs, and the release sound, the releasing of the gongs. This is quite straightforward, of course, so let me demonstrate that quickly. Okay, that's the layer volumes. Then directly below that, there's the release time parameter, which edits the release time. This is especially useful, of course, and works especially on the sustained articulation. So, versus. And as I said before, this is a local parameter, so you can change this individually for all articulations, which is useful for instance, the gong machine. When you've set a pattern which has some different sustained articulations, like this is the mallet hit bell and this is the mallet hit off center. So this sounds like this right now, because now the release time of the mallet hit bell, which is the first step of the gong machine, is set to 0. When I pull that up, you can do further rhythmic accents with this, so you can differentiate the different release times for the different articulations, so you can build more complex patterns in the gong machine. Okay, that was the release time. Next parameter is a temporal round robin range. Quite a crucial parameter in our instrument, because it repitches neighboring notes from the notes you're playing to your note. So the result is a much more diverse set of sounds which alternate. And so this is not meant for getting more round robins, as you sometimes see, but more, it's really a temporal parameter. Let me demonstrate that. When you just play a chord with this 2-0, oh, let me put up the release time, and now gradually move this parameter, you get a much more adventurous and much more unstable sound. This is because their other gongs repitched to the notes. And it's actually more acoustic sounding, I think, when it's higher up. It sounds more like the alterations you get when you have real instruments. But there are lots of round robins when you set this to 0, so that's no problem. If you want that your completely original sound, put this to 0. Okay, that's a temporal round robin range. Then to the right of that there's a dynamics knob. When set to the far right on 10, this actually emulates the dynamics of the real gong set, the acoustic one. But this is extreme, so you can play it very soft to very loud. When set to the complete opposite at -10, the dynamics are almost completely flat, like this. So what would be wise settings are something like 2 or 3, that's what we recommend, which gives a fairly big dynamic range still, but still manageable. Okay, so far for the dynamics. The next group of parameters here are the panning parameters. First, a word about the panning of this instrument. It's not really from left to right, low to high, as you might expect, because the gongs are in multiple arrays above each other, multiple stories in a big frame. Also quite dependent on the musical material the performer has to play. It's really an economic thing, because when you need to play things quickly and you have to run meters for 2 notes which follow up on each other, it's really undoable. So they are always arranged in an optimal placement for the thing to play. So that's what the first panning mode actually emulates. So the gongs are quite randomly placed, but statically in the stereo field, like a real set. The pan width just below that is the actual width of the panning of the statically panned gongs. Let me demonstrate that. So this is without. Now they're all in the middle, stereo, but in the middle. And when you there's also a second panning mode, which is random, which places each new event, each note, in a random place in the stereo field. So this gives a very wide sound. Also dependent on the pan width. This is without any random panning, and this is with full random panning. But when you play repetitive notes, like, you can hear it bouncing around. So I mean, if you don't like that, you should choose the first pan mode. But it sounds very wide, so that's nice. Okay, that's the panning parameters. Then the next parameter is the pedal invert. This is a really utility thing. As you might know, there are 2 standards for sustain pedals, which always sort of astonishes me, which are the polar opposites of each other. So when the instrument doesn't do what you expect it to do when hitting the pedal, flip the switch and the polarity is reversed. Okay, next button is the turn off splash. These gongs are, when you hit them truly hard, they tend to splash rather chaotically, quite noisily also. This is of course, well, just a inherent aspect of the instrument itself. But when you don't like that, when you're playing chords or tonal stuff, you can flip the switch and put it to splash on. So I will show you the difference. This is with the splash on, when you hit it hard. So when you play a chord, when you leave that off, it sounds like this. So when you want to percussion range of the instrument, you should leave that off. But if you want to play chords or other stuff, you should set it to on. Okay, then there's the load all one articulation button. This is a thing for saving on precious memory. When you put it to 1, it loads only the articulation you choose, and it starts loading it the moment you choose it. So this is you have to wait a little while until. So when you use the key switches, of course, this won't work because then you need to wait until it loads. But if you're really low on RAM or have got a very slow machine, you could choose to put it on load 1. There's actually one exception. When you want to use the Gong machine, and it will say loading all articulations for Gong machine, because the Gong machine of course has a grid which you can use. You can choose any articulation, so it needs to load them all. So when you set the Gong machine, you start playing the Gong machine, it will go from 1 to all. Okay, there's one parameter left here on far upper right. This is boost fundamental. This is for the off-center rim and stick hits. These articulations tend to sound quite dissonant and inharmonic. This is nice, of course, if you're looking for that sound, but this boost fundamental just boosts the fundamental frequencies of these gongs a little, so you can more easily play chords and tonal stuff. Let me demonstrate this. So this is with the boost fundamental. This is on the rim, and without. So this is quite a difference. So it sounds the pitches are much less defined now. This is quite a neat trick when you want to use the spectral characteristics of the rim or of center hits, but use them tonally. You can put this to on. Its default setting is also on. Okay, I think we've come to the last parameter of the settings page. Thanks for watching.